Transportation Licensing Commission, if you'll please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Mr. Fields circulated to us the meeting minutes from last week. Have the commissioners had an opportunity to review those minutes?
We have.
Is there a motion regarding approval?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We have a public hearing today. The first, we've been asked to review a request to establish non-consent and emergency record rates. These were rates that were previously approved by us for recommendation to the council at our October 2021 meeting. And I understand that the council has sent those rates back to us for approval. Is that correct, Mr. Fields?
Yes, sir. On October the 28th of 2021, we presented you a new rate sheet for consideration. You took it up, you approved it, which meant you sent it to the council for their approval. It was a unanimous vote, and it was, again, recommended to the Metro Council. So the only thing different we're asking with, since then, the fuel has gone very high. We've asked for a 10% fuel surcharge until the price of the diesel fuel, which is what they're using mostly, goes below $3.
Is there any one who's requested to speak on this issue?
The record come this year, but we've not had anyone else ask.
All right. This is a public hearing, so if you would like to speak on the issue of the rates that we had recommended back in October to the council and that are now before us again today regarding whether or not they'll be implemented, and also the request by the industry that we also allow for a 10% fuel surcharge until the price of diesel drops below $3 a gallon. If you'll please raise your hand if you'd like to speak on the issue.
Hello, my name is Michael Martin. I'm with Martin's Record Service, Mike's Custom Tone, and Bailey's Record Service. Just randomly, I grabbed a few bill of sales before I came up here today. The first one dating back to February of 2014 for a 2015 Freightliner. Cost before tax was $89,000 on that truck. Same truck I purchased Tuesday, 8/16/22 was the invoice date. I took shipping on it the other day. Same truck now costs me $131,843, and that's in a 8-year span. There we've jumped $40,000 on just a standard tow truck, flatbed tow truck. So that's just one example of how prices have risen for us. You know, not only with inflation and having to pay drivers more and parts costing more and fuel costing more, trucks costing more, you know, just everything altogether is really hitting us hard. So just wanted to give y'all an example of vehicle pricing for your consideration.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the issue? All right, at this point in time, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, we can now deliberate. Someone can make a motion regarding the rates that we had recommended at our October meeting.
Move to approve the rates that were Move to approve the rates that were proposed at the October, or approved at the October 2021 TLC meeting.
And the surcharge.
And the surcharge, 10% fuel surcharge. Thank you, Mr. Fields.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we have an annual meeting for the purposes of consideration of the applications for certificates of public convenience and necessity for new and additional low-speed vehicles. Mr. Fields has notified me that no new applications have been requested. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It'd be appropriate for you to open a public hearing and then close it. There's nothing for you to consider, but it's appropriate to have the public hearing.
All right. Has anyone asked to speak on this issue?
No.
All right. So presently, excuse me, we are having our public hearing. This is our annual meeting for considering additional certificates of public convenience and necessity for new or for low-speed vehicles. There have been no applications for additional permits submitted, but is there anyone here who would like to speak on the issue? We'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
No actions required.
If we're not going to do anything, no actions required. All right. So do the commissioners want to do anything?
Relative to list.
Having not heard anything, we'll go ahead and take no action. Now we have our third public hearing is our annual meeting for purposes of consideration of applications for certificates of public convenience and necessity for additional pedal vehicles. Mr. Fields?
Each year, just as you had a public hearing for the low-speed vehicles, you're required to have a public hearing for consideration of any applications or alterations, any new applications or alterations to the existing fleets. You had 4 applications, Jungle Jim's Pedicab, Nashville Bike Cab, Pro Pedicab, and the Cycle Company. It is 3 pedicab related and 1 pedal carriage related.
Do we have requests to speak submitted here?
Just the company so far.
Just the companies? All right, I'm not addressing you yet, sir. I'm just, there's always an opportunity to submit ahead of time that you would like to speak, and that's, I was giving deference to those people that thought to submit a request directly to Mr. Fields or to the TLC office. No one apparently has asked to speak except the companies themselves. So we'll hear from the companies, and of course I'll take anyone else who's in attendance who would like to address the issue as well. You'll have an opportunity. So I'll go ahead and call Jungle Jim's Pedicab. Oh, that's you?
Yeah, that's why I was like, oh, I talked to him. Oh, we're good. Hello, my name is James Gill, aka Jungle Jim's Pedicabs. I have operated an independent pedicab business in this city for the last 7 years. I would love to keep doing it for another 7 to 10 years, but that kind of rests in your hands. Just like with a taxi, the only real path to longevity in this industry is to own your own equipment, but in the 7 years I've been working in the city, only 2 people have been granted certificates of convenience. Currently, if I'm going to work full-time, say 4 days a week over the course of a month paying day rates, I'd be spending over $2,000 a year, whereas if I purchased my own equipment after the initial cost, I'd be looking at $300 to $400 a month. So I'd be looking at an 80% reduction in my overhead cost, which in a city where rent's up 36% in the last 1 year, I kind of need to keep that money to keep operating on these streets. When you saw me here last year, I was told that I was being denied due to traffic considerations because you guys didn't have the ability to regulate the larger buses. There wasn't legislation in place yet. But I believe in the last year I've watched over 40 of them already gain access to the streets. So I'm here again. as a tiny little tricycle, moving at 3 or 4 times their speed, just asking you to consider us. If you recall last year, the officer speaking said that of all the forms of transportation downtown, we were the least offensive. And I even had a petition with me signed by hundreds of people speaking to the necessity of the service that I provide as well as the quality that I personally add to that service. Pedicabs first popped up in this country as a remedy for high traffic areas like New York because we can help people that are stuck in it, and every pedicab offers a sober alternative to a person on a scooter, perhaps intoxicated. I'm just here before you today begging you to grant me the ability to continue doing what I love to do, because if long-term drivers aren't allowed access to their own equipment, you kind of guarantee their eventual failure in the industry. And I hope that after 7 years in this city with a perfect driving record, I have earned that trust from you. The last pedicab equipment rental company here went out of business, leaving me without the ability to use that form of income. And the only way for me to really solidify myself for a future in it is to purchase my own equipment. So I humbly ask you to grant me that. Thank you.
What do you do presently?
Pedicab.
Pedicab?
I'm a professional photographer as well as a musician, and then on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, typically we'll be out there, if I'm working all the time. Yeah.
So you're working for one of the other companies?
Yes, I've rented every single time I've ever worked here because I haven't had the option to purchase for myself.
The model is you rent a bike, you rent a pedicab from another company?
Yes, that's the only way that I have to be able to operate unless you allow me to have access to a certificate to purchase my own equipment and ride for myself. There's only one day out of the year. You can understand from my position, it's seemingly rather difficult in my industry in this city for a person to operate at all. That's the reason why there aren't very many long-term pedicabbers in this city, because it's untenable to continue paying day rental rates if you're going to be doing it as a full-time career long-term. Like, it's just, no person would ever choose to continue to do that if they had any other option.
Just so that I'm clear.
That's the only way I can stay in the city,
another-
or else I have to go to another
A
city.
company has a license to operate.
Yes.
Yes.
And rents him the bike, and
Yes.
then he pedals it.
Very similar to some, in the taxi cab company, there are some company-owned cabs that they pay, a cab driver pays a fee to the company.
But obviously, any cab driver would be hoping to purchase their own equipment and stop bleeding out. And I've been here for 7 years. I've never had a single hiccup. I've never had a ticket. I've never had an accident. I have never had anything. There's no negative mark on my record. I would hope that, 7 years down the road, I could hopefully have my own stuff going on. But
Thank you.
thank you.
Nashville Bike Cab.
Hi, my name's Travis Stowers. I run Nashville Bike Cab. I've been doing this for like 19 years of my life, which is amazing. I've seen cities go up and down. I own pedicabs here. I own pedicabs in Texas. I own pedicabs in Indianapolis. I run the pedicabs. I run 155 pedicabs at Coachella, and I run like half that at Bonnaroo. It's a weird transportation business, as Billy would know. Like, everybody in the transportation business is just a hard one to organize and regulate. I'm not, just to clarify, somehow I'm down for pedal carriages and
That was
stuff.
that was an error. I was just gonna say,
I'm
he has
here-
applied for pedicabs rather than pedal carriages. and I
Yeah, when we
apologize
came,
for that.
I made a nice business plan, and I originally applied for 20 pedicabs, and you all, thank God, gave us 12. So I'm just here to apply for 8 more. Broadway is such a tourist attraction, but like, you guys are at like this leeway of whether or not to allow more things on the streets with the party buses and everything else. I'm just trying to differentiate the pedicabs from everything else. Like, we're in with the pedal carriages in our ordinance, so just trying to apply, get more. I think the city needs more, but in my experience of doing this, seeing open versus closed, like, whenever it's such a cheap buy-in business that it's usually a race to the bottom, whereas it's very hard to regulate, and then more and more enforcement is needed. I don't think Billy's had any problems with the 12 pedicabs that we've had out on the streets yet. I try to self-regulate as much as possible. That's why I've been in this business for such a long time.
And all 12 of yours are pedicabs, not pedal
Yes,
carriages?
all pedicabs. I also own pedal carriages, but just not in Nashville. So that's my other expertise. If there's any differentiate or anybody needs to know anything different about the two businesses, it's right up my alley.
Do you operate all 12 of those on a regular basis?
Yes.
Or are you just operating 12 at events? So on the
No,
daily,
no, the 12 in Nashville are here full time.
I know they're here. Are they actually in use every
Yes.
day?
8 hours, 16 hours?
Yes, again, yes. One of the reasons I want to look at the ordinance is because we're not allowed to work between 4 and 6. So I would like to have our own ordinance, so we could, like, that's a nice money hour to move people, moving to and from dinner. There's so many new hotels popping up, and just adding something to get, people are just Lyft and Uber can't move these people like we can. Make their experience in Nashville way better.
All right, thank you.
My name is Ash Pereira, and I also work to run Nashville Bike Cab with Travis. I did want to say additionally, I also worked for Nashville Pedicab prior to Nashville Bike Cab, and I worked for that company for about 5 years. In 2013 and 2014, originally there was 2 companies or certificate holders. Nashville Pedicab had 20 permits, I believe 20 bike permits, and the other company had friends of ours, Mark and Kelsey, had 3. So there was originally 23 about 7 years ago. And obviously inflation, cost of doing business, tourism, and the population of people have grown significantly since then. So we've been super grateful to be able to operate the last 3 years, but it also has been a struggle with prices everywhere, including the cost of doing business going up. These bikes operate with bike components and some other different components, so there's things here and there that break often with these. So we do not necessarily have backup bikes to provide our riders. We are constantly turning our wheels mechanically to make sure that all 12 are up and running. And your question about are they operating all of the time? Mondays through Thursdays, we can see about 30 to 50% of them operating, and the weekends probably full capacity at night times only, and only about maybe 20 or 30% during the daytimes, unless there's a football game, of course, then we're all out there. So we're not necessarily operating full-time every second of the day. At 6 o'clock, we allow our riders to come in. We might have 3 or 4 come in, and then we have some that come periodically throughout the night. So it is absolutely spread out. We have bikes that are sometimes down for, we have an average of 2 or 3 down at a time. So that's 12. And so that's about 9 and spread out. So 9 aren't all on the street out at the same time. 12 aren't all on the street at the same time unless there's an event. But it's really up to the rider. So we have about 3 or 4 spread out. Sometimes in periods we have, between 8 and 11 we have them. Sorry, 2 minutes. But I just want to say I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's been 7 years, and we're really not technically asking for more per se, even though we are. We're just trying to get back to where we were even 7 years ago in order to operate. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pro Pedicab?
Hello, I'm Craig Davis of Pro Pedicab, seeking to start a new small business. But I have been operating in the pedicab space for about 9 years. I own 2 myself, and I store a 3rd right now, so I'm applying for 3 pedicabs. If granted, I think I would replace 2 of them with brand new pedicabs. I have one really nice one and 2 kind of like vintage ones. All that to say, I know all these people. I love this industry so much, and I really think, based on experiences I've had in other cities where there are tenfold the pedicabs for a comparable population, that the perception that was painted on us last year of being unpopular with locals turns out to be untrue in the cities where I've been and the people I've talked to about pedicabs and how they feel, where locals tend to, obviously nobody likes to be stuck in traffic, but we're not like pedal taverns, we're not like the party buses who hire people off of Craigslist just for the weekend or whatever often, who are unprofessional. At least with my company, Pro Pedicab, I'm seeking to hire people who are interested in doing this like Jungle Gym long term, or interested in maybe have other creative pursuits. Nashville's a very creative city. I would love to give people an economic driver for their creative pursuits. Like, I'm a singer-songwriter myself, and at the moment, in order to make a living with pedicabbing, I have to travel a lot, which has been great. It's taken me all over the country, but I would love to have the opportunity to work in the city where I live and have more time to work on my music and provide an opportunity for others to do the same. And again, I know all these people that are applying for permits today, and in Austin, for example, it's a wonderful, thriving subculture and community of hundreds of pedicabs. Hundreds. There are, I think, 400 pedicabs. You could look it up. It's about 400 pedicabs. And then hundreds more drivers of those pedicabs. They're all on the east side of 35, and they all know each other. It's lovely. I would love to see maybe not that many pedicabs in Nashville, but certainly more than 12, in my opinion. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. The Cycle Company.
Good afternoon. I have some material. Can I pass this up?
Yes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin Wider. The information that you have in front of you, most of that should be submitted in the application request as well. But just wanted to have that in front of you guys so you can see it there. Today, looking for approval to operate and start up the Cycle Company here in Nashville. This is a company that was headquartered out of New York, similar to like a franchise model would be starting that here. So I would be new to the pedal industry. But I think the perspective that I bring and the other endeavors that I'm operating in, allow me to bring some relative experience in. And so it starts with Cruisin' Tiki's Nashville. So we've been operating on Old Hickory Lake for 2 years now. We've seen over 3,000 customers over 3 years, no incidences. We have a fairly decent social media following. So having a good time, the Nashville way, but doing it safely and compliantly is a big part of our operation. And I think we can replicate that with the Cycle Company. And so with the Cycle Company, where I lack the experience specifically with the pedal industry, the 9 years of proven, efforts and operations they have across the country, I think are going to allow us to bring a good experience to the city. And lastly, I've worked downtown for several years. I'm very aware of the pros and cons as it relates to the locals as well as tourists that are operating down there. So I think we take those practices into consideration and, be mindful of those that work and operate downtown, but also have that experience for the folks that are coming in and joining our city. So appreciate the consideration this afternoon.
Thank you.
Mr. Fields, that's a pedal tavern, not a pedicab.
It was my impression he was that, so this is a pedal cab, a pedal carriage, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's where it got shifted in the agenda. So he is the pedal carriage, they were the pedicab. The other was the pedicab.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the issue of whether additional certificates of public convenience and necessity for pedal vehicles should be considered. At this point in time, we'll close the public hearing. And Ms. Costonis, is there, please, can you remind us, is there a distinction in our rules between awarding an additional certificate for a pedicab versus an additional certificate for a pedal carriage?
So obviously they're different types of vehicles, so you would be looking at them kind of serving maybe slightly different public conveniences and necessities. But the language or the standard that you follow is the same with both types of vehicles, and that is that if you find that further or additional pedicab or pedal carriage service in the metropolitan government area is required by the public convenience and necessity, and that the applicant is fit, willing, and able to provide such service and to conform to the provisions of this chapter and the rules promulgated by this commission, then you may issue a certificate of public convenience and necessity. And there's a little bit more language, just a little bit further down, in 050, I think.
So, well, my question is, for example, we'll just take Jungle Jim's pedicab, the first one listed. They're seeking, 2 to 3 pedicabs.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to award them certificates for 2 to 3 certificates, do they have to be pedicabs?
If you would award them, we would ask you to clarify what kind of vehicle they would be awarded to.
What I would suggest, and I think what we've done in the past, is like you've looked at the overall public necessity, convenience, and whether it supports additional of each
Correct.
category. and
That's
then
why
you
I'm
would
trying to make
allocate
sure
those
that there
amongst
are
the
2
applicants.
distinct categories.
Yeah, I would do that. It says or, so.
Could I ask a question about our rules? I seem to remember at one point we required all the pedicabs to be electrified. Is that correct?
I think I'll have to pull the rule. I don't think it actually went into the rule. I think they came back and asked. I think we actually changed the ordinance to allow electric, is what I think. Because initially, I don't think they could have.
Could you check that?
Sure.
I'm sorry, but.
That's-
So we had to make a decision to allow it, or council did?
Again, working from memory, it was disallowed and we went back to the council and got permission to allow it.
So you think we just allowed it rather than required?
Correct. It said if electric, the way the ordinance reads, if electric motor assistance is installed, it must meet all the manufacturer standards. So they don't have to, but they can.
Do we have any idea how many of them are currently electrified?
I was going to say, all of our that I've inspected have all had the motor assist.
Okay.
I don't think you'd ever need to worry about that because none of us would want to be out there without it. So
Same here.
definitely gonna find electronics on all these bikes.
Just so everyone can hear, Jungle Jim's pedicab just offered that all of the pedicabs are electric, and in fact, the companies greatly prefer that because there are too many. I'm paraphrasing. There's too many hills.
Too many hills and we eat well in the South.
We don't want to make anybody walk.
How many pedicabs are currently permitted?
The one list I did not bring, 23.
Well, that's.
No, they're
is
more than
that-
13. Total?
There's 12 of them.
That's right. There are only 2 companies. One went out of business. 13's correct.
So there's 13 pedicabs.
Right.
And then there's 23 pedal
23
carriages.
pedal carriages.
How many were there before the one company went out of business?
23.
when did that company go out of business?
2 years? Yeah, three or 4 years ago.
I seem to remember at one time there was even more than that because I believe one of the companies wanted to go into the pedal carriage business and offered up half of their permits
Yes.
to be able to do those pedicabs, and then the whole thing just kind of washed away, and then they were never renewed. And that was when we first visited the time study for traffic control.
There are 3 things to consider, I mean, aside from what they presented. Do recall a moratorium that you had placed on vehicles back in April. There is another study that will be completed either sometime this fall, September or October. I'm not directly involved in that preparation. And then we still have Connect Downtown coming first quarter of next year. Saying that with more information coming.
And I just wanted to add too, when we initially made that deal, of course, we did not have anywhere near the volume of the entertainment vehicles that we have now, not even close. So that the pedal cabs and pedal taverns were kind of king of the street. So at that particular time, there has been a lot more volume added since then.
So basically, what you'd have to do is, if you wanted to, you'd make a find. You'd have to have a finding that there is a need. There's a public need, so they would met the standard that proved there's a need for a certificate of public convenience and necessity. If you were to do that, then you would be able to consider each application. But the first thing you would consider is, have they proven there's a need? If they have, then we go to step 2.
Well, clearly in 2018, this commission decided there was a need for 23 pedicabs. And there are 13 today, really not by any decision we made, but just because one of the companies decided to go out of business. And I think the companies have a valid argument that their impact on traffic is very different than a pedal carriage or another vehicle on the street. It's more akin to a bicycle. So that I think we should consider that if in deciding whether there's a need for additional pedicabs.
Do we consider the pedicabs separate, the need and necessity for the pedicabs separate from the pedal taverns?
Yes,
Yes.
I think you do, because it says
I think
or.
we should.
Okay.
They serve somewhat different public necessities and conveniences,
Yeah,
the way the
I think
business
that
models operate.
Okay. I will kick this off. I'm going to make a motion that there is no further need for any pedal taverns in Nashville.
Pedal carriages.
Pedal carriage is the
okay.
term.
Second,
Sorry.
Any discussion?
a point that I'd like to discuss, and I'll ask this at a subsequent meeting in the fall. I'd like to revisit the need, even for 23 pedal carriages. I'd like for all the licensees to come back. I'll make a motion probably later this fall. But, I'm very interested in the Connect Downtown study. I'm interested in traffic movement. I'm interested in Nashvillians' need for these and the public's need for these, and to have an automatic renewal of a license for a pedal carriage on an annual basis without review by this commission when we have so much growth, to me at least, is wrong.
Well, we do review. I mean, in theory, we can always lower the number.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I can bring back to y'all in January or February, and I believe this is to come back, the annual renewal of the permit for the what is it called,
The pedal
Pedal
vehicles, yeah.
carriage.
Pedal carriage, thank you, is to come back before y'all in March. I can commit that either in January or February, we do an update presentation on where we are with Connect Downtown.
Right.
That would actually be able to help y'all with that decision and what direction you want to go in for March's renewal.
And that could, certainly facilitate the need for more. But I just, as a new member of the commission,
Yeah.
really look forward to that
Yeah,
presentation.
so we can definitely, I would say January, February, would be most likely February, but if I'm gonna get the stuff in front of me in time, I'll definitely bring it to y'all in January, but I know I can bring it to you in February,
Yeah.
before y'all have to make that decision at the annual review.
Yeah, and it fits the schedule perfectly. All of the pedal vehicles expire on April the 30th. So the March that you're suggesting that it would fit.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of Mr. Rogers' motion?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, can I make another motion?
Yes.
I move that we find that there is a need and public necessity for more pedicabs. Hope I'm using the right term. At the current time, just like there was in 2018.
I second that motion.
Do you have a number in mind, or just want to debate that further?
Which do we need to do first?
Well, I mean,
Think you have to-
we're discussing your motion
I
right now,
know, yeah,
so.
I was asking legal,
Oh.
I guess.
You'd
Okay,
you'd find the need first, right?
Right, hang on just a sec, let me go back to the language. Oops.
Yeah, I can.
And I guess I have, that actually, Carrie's
Okay.
motion begs another question. If there were 23 in 2018, and then one of the companies went out of business, did they just surrender?
They actually surrendered and traded, if it makes sense. You allowed them to move from pedicabs to pedal carriages.
Okay.
And your thinking at the time was fewer pedal carriages, fewer pedicabs. In other words, you get rid of pedicabs, but put on only 2 pedal carriages.
I understand.
So that was where that particular way that was discussed.
More caterpillars, less ants.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
I might argue just the opposite, but that's.
Sorry, Ms.
We're
Costonis,
past
I interrupted you.
Yes, the language is, if the MTLC finds that further or additional pedicab or pedal carriage service in the metropolitan government area is required by the public convenience and necessity. So that's your first finding. And the second is, and I think when it says, to the extent it says further or additional, you probably need to determine what extent there is a need for further or additional service. And then the second criteria is that the applicant is fit, willing, and able to provide such services, and so of course you'd have to make that on a case-by-case basis as to each of the applicants before you.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Do I need to put a number in my motion then, or? we
You
need
can
to-
do it both ways, either way. I think you can just, you've already said like you found that there is a general need for it. I do think that the better way to do it is to quantify that need and then determine how to allocate it.
In the same motion?
You can do it in the same motion or 2 separate motions. I'm fine either way.
Okay. Well, as the maker of the motion, I would prefer that we deal with it in 2 separate motions. If that's okay.
All right, any further discussion? I believe there was already a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. So we've decided that additional permits should be granted, just not the amount.
Relative, I guess,
No, you started the thought, let's hear it.
to determine the amount, do we know how fast the electric assist bikes can roll?
They're comparable to a scooter or slightly faster. we can go as little as a half a mile an hour, upwards to 20, and we keep up with traffic. We go faster than the party buses
That's
because
right.
everybody's standing, and we're a tenth of the size.
And would you say you're faster than the pedal carriages?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the point I was
unfortunately,
making.
we do have to kind
Y-
of work around that.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Pass them.
Yes.
Same thing I have to do on a bicycle.
And we are more, we are a point A to B service most of the times. Often, I mean, every once in a while, we do get asked for tours and things of that sort, but we are more point A to B. You know, it prevents people from having to take an expensive Uber from Printer's Alley to
Right.
Acme Feed and Seed, just a short distance. And we kind of stay out of the way of traffic and be able to pull
Right.
on the side of the road. You will not see lines of pedicabs here because of the growth of population. We are so spread out, we barely see each other whenever we're out on the road because there's not enough of us out there to be out there. And also we are spread out, so like I said, we don't have all 12 on the street at one time usually unless there's an event. It's usually spread out between 6 p.m. to sometimes 2 in the morning, and different people out. You know, we might have 2 or 3 people out at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning versus all 12. But if you guys have any other questions, I manage most of the pedicabs downtown. I'd be able to provide you any information.
So in essence, you're not competing with pedal carriages.
No, sir.
You're, if anything, you're competing with scooters.
Not necessarily. I wouldn't say, because we're not an app service. We're more personable and local, and we are there for the people that phones are dead and they can't get an Uber. And families, of course. Yeah. Yes. Well, and also Ubers are very hard to get when the traffic is so congested. It could take someone upwards of 30 to 45 minutes to get a decently priced Uber or Lyft to get away from downtown. We often have to take people away from downtown just so that they can get a Lyft home or wherever they're going.
Are you allowed to use bike lanes?
No, ma'am, I don't believe so. I think we just kind of maneuver. We do cater to traffic. So if it is safer or in an event that someone's speeding or our bikes are coming or scooters, you know, God knows what they're going to do on the streets. But we kind of pull over to the side if there's a lot of traffic coming just so that the cars could get through faster.
Did you want to add something?
In the legislation, we're supposed to behave exactly like a motor vehicle and a car. However,
Not necessarily. That's not necessarily true.
No, they can't.
He needs to be quiet. No, I don't think he is. All right, we don't need to get into details of class 2 versus 3 versus bus. Because I could talk all day.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, Mr. Rogers, did you have another motion?
Yes. Trying to count. Okay. So in 2018, there were 23. We have 13 currently operating, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion that we allow up to 23 pedicabs. Is that the appropriate motion? And then deal with specific requests?
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Aye. Oh, I'm sorry.
Eager.
I'll make the motion.
No further discussion having been proposed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
May I ask for a clarification?
Yes.
Was that 23 additional or 23 in total?
Total.
So 10 additional.
No, tell him to be quiet.
That's all right.
He needs to be quiet.
All right. So now we're considering how to allot the 10 additional pedicabs we've just approved.
I have a motion. I move that we approve 2 for Jungle Jim's pedicab, 2 for Pro Pedicab, and 6 for Nashville Bike Cab, which is a total of 10, which would bring us to 23, assuming my math's correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion as to the allotment? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, that concludes our annual meeting regarding consideration of additional certificates of public convenience and necessity for additional pedal vehicles. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is under wrecker and towing services. We've been asked to review Priority Towing Company's application, which we deferred from the June 2022 meeting.
At the June 20, and they're represented by council, so they could explain. At the June 22nd meeting, you had a meeting, we discussed it, and asked for additional information to be sent, and they have provided additional information.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all again. As you all recall, just a little brief recap of history. This initially came before this commission on my client's own application, and as I described it in June, there was a stumble out of the gate. Just a fundamental misunderstanding of how the ordinance and the rules here applied as compared to in Chicago. He had not obtained his permit before operating, and he was denied initially, I want to say, in the May meeting, if not the April meeting of this matter. We came back before this commission after we were retained to give him some guidance on how to operate appropriately during that time period. At the June hearing, there was a notification that we received from Mr. Fields that day that he had received a citation for operating internally in Davidson County. We were then asked to provide documentation of his wrecker service because he not only operates here in Nashville, or is situated here in Nashville and asking to operate here in Nashville, but he operates in what I call the surrounding ring, the counties outside of Davidson, for which the ordinance does not apply to him in those outside counties. So we provided the initial documentation. We showed up to the citation hearing, and it's one of those odd situations that we showed up to the citation hearing with the check to give payment, but the officer did not show up at the hearing, so it's been deferred. So we still hold hat in hand the check to pay for our mistake and are willing to do so. The documentation we provided now shows that we have abided by the direction of this commission since June 8th of 2022. That was when, as I represented previously, when we were retained as a law firm. We had a look back period because there was a question of what happened from the May 26th, it was May 26th, that's the date of his initial application, May 26th to the date that we were retained. And the information we identified was that in that time period, he had 3 what I would call inter-Davidson County incidents where the tow originated and terminated in Davidson County. He had a smattering, I believe, of approximately either 11 or 12 in which the tow originated either outside of Davidson County and then terminated in Davidson County, or originated in Davidson County and then terminated outside of Davidson County. So an exterior touch point to Davidson County. After our retention, which was June 8th, which is our line of demarcation, we said don't do anything that touches Davidson County at that point. And what our documentation, we believe, shows is that he's done just that. He's provided no wrecker services in Davidson County since June 8th of 2022. And we brought with us today the August records because we are just providing information at this point. Because as I said at the June hearing, we're willing to show that we want to follow the rules and to follow your guidance to get this permit first before we operate. And we continue to operate in the mid-state area, abiding by this council's direction of not operating in Davidson County until we've obtained a permit. I believe if you look at the application for this entity, it's an entity that already provides services in another state. It's an entity that has a good record of providing services, and it's an entity that continues to provide services in the surrounding ring counties. It is insured, it is licensed, and has no notable incidents that would otherwise prohibited from operating. So I'm asking you today, we stumbled, and that's been a pretty constant thing, but we've gotten back up, and we've been compliant. And I think we're, again, check in hand, we're to pay for the citation of the sake of operating Davidson County, and we're willing to do that. But we're asking for a permit so this company can continue now to actually operate inside Davidson County, in addition to the external ring of Davidson County.
Thank you.
Our client brought us the August records. We're happy to tender them to Mr. Fields if you would like to review them.
Thank you. If you would pass them forward.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Chairman, if I could, a couple of things. One of the things that you mentioned, if you would, is of your record in Illinois. Could you tell me about any citations, violations, public complaints that exist in the county, and have they, the state of Illinois, and have they ever had any of their permits, any kind, whether federal or local, revoked, turned down, or suspended?
I think the better person to ask that would be the actual applicant, because I don't want to misspeak, because I'm not versed fully in the lineage of history, and I don't want to misspeak to this commission. Our client's here. He's happy to field those questions.
Just a question. I had a couple of questions.
Please. Teresa, do you have the oath?
Actually, I think you have it in.
Yes. Mr. May, if you'll please repeat after me. I swear or affirm that the testimony
I swear or affirm that the testimony
that I'm about to give is the truth,
that I'm about to give is the truth,
the whole truth, and
the whole
nothing but the
truth, and
truth.
nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My question was, have you ever had a permit suspended from a company, a state? Have you had any violations? Tell me about consumer complaints in Illinois. Cities have refused you the right to operate, anything like that?
So, we have been licensed in Illinois since the start date of our company. I don't have the exact date in front of me, I apologize. Year 2017 for Priority Wrecker Service. Prior to that, I operated as Johnny's Towing and Recovery in 2013 of September. Through your business growth, you deal with different situations. At one point, we had gotten some citations for paperwork process, but had been rectified immediately. At one point, there was a revocation of 1 day, reinstated immediately, as an unpaid fine wasn't even noticed. We didn't know that we had that fine. That had been paid. Other than that, we're currently licensed with the City of Chicago. We're currently licensed with the State of Illinois. We're currently licensed with the U.S. Department of Transportation. All of our licenses are current and valid.
How accurate is your GPS information that I saw in the reports? In other words, are they placed at the? Are they done by the wrecker at the site?
I don't know how I would answer that question. There's a GPS unit on the truck, and then there's a trip history that we print.
Okay. What creates the documents that I've reviewed that tell me, for instance, if it says tow start, longitude such and such, or latitude such and such, longitude such and such, is that created by the vehicle at the site? I'm assuming it is.
So our GPS tracking system,
Yes.
or our invoicing system?
GPS, and what I'm looking at, the only information I have where it started and stopped is based on your latitude and longitude. So I've been looking at lots of latitude and longitude.
Yep.
So the question is, how do you establish the latitude and longitude? Is this accurate?
I couldn't answer that question. I would imagine it is, yes.
Can I interject something, Billy, if I could?
Sure.
Your service use something like this?
We use a thing it's called,
Is it a
it's actually
delivery
on,
app so that when they get at the point of origin,
they put the customer's name in where it's picking up, and it's part of what they sign and billing and all that?
Yep.
So to answer that question, if he's using an app like this, it drops what we call a breadcrumb at the point of pickup. And that is just like the GPS in your watch, your phone, your car, so it would be at the point of origin.
Correct, and he was provided that as well,
Good.
through our system. It's called Omadi.
Let me ask about a particular wreck, or a call that would have been on June the 20th. It was at, I could call the longitude, it was called at Dickerson Pike and Williamson Road in Goodlettsville. I checked your latitude and your longitude.
Okay.
It's in Davidson County.
Okay.
So I challenged that they have not operated in Davidson County in any fashion since January.
Do we want to
But-
swear in Billy as well?
What is that that you have, is what I'm saying?
This is your document.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, I mean, this is just their evidence I'm presenting back to the commission.
there should be a Bates number on it, Billy, right?
Okay. I'm not sure what he presented. I apologize. Is this what he's talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
may I?
Sure.
Just so the commission record's clear, this is referring to priority wrecker document 356 and 357. It's a tow that originated in Goodlettsville. We had it down as Sumner County because it was the one that we flagged, but if I'm mistaken, I'm mistaken. Because Goodlettsville, I think, is the one that sits both.
Yes.
This is where it started, in Davidson.
I'll admit then that if that's the latitude longitude, we got it on the wrong side of the county line.
But the other side of it, and I'm happy to take the oath, if you want me to, Mr. Chairman.
Because then that one terminated in Robertson County.
Correct.
Oh, Mr. Fields.
If we want Mr. Fields' testimony to have equal weight to Mr. May's.
But I don't know that I have anything else to add.
And I'm not familiar with that particular towing situation.
Well, Ms. Costonis, I'm happy to swear in Billy, although I think it was in the form of a question he was asking.
Yeah, if he was asking a question, then
Yeah.
that's fine. It seems like they've stipulated to it, so.
Did you all get to see the map?
It was right in the middle of it. It was in
Did
the
you wanna
file,
see?
I believe.
Did you want to see the map again?
You stated in 2013 that you worked for a company called, or you established a company called Johnny's. Was that a partnership?
No, it was mine.
And then you reestablished another company in 2017 under a different name. Was there a reason for that?
We were working in the direction of some municipality work at the time, and my wife wanted to be the owner of the company, and she had a bigger outlook on things, and we decided to go that route to just merge and transform into another company that would be bigger and greater for the communities.
None of that was to get around any licensing issues, any fines, fees, permits.
Nope.
Any additional questions for Mr. May?
If I could ask a question about your experience in Illinois, have you ever received citations from the Illinois Commerce Commission?
Yes.
How many?
I don't have an exact number, but not many.
Would have been 26 between September 2021 and April 2022.
I don't believe it was that amount, no.
Can you explain what is that?
We ever had any contact? Are you also regulated by the city of Chicago?
We are.
So both?
Yep.
Have we ever had any contact with the regulatory agencies up there?
I have spoken to the Department of I guess it was not Interstate Commerce, but the Department of Consumer Affairs, or whichever was that deals with this. And
Yeah,
they
it's
did
the Commerce
to interrupt you,
Commission,
it's the Department of Consumer Affairs for Chicago, and then it's the Illinois Commerce Commission, which is a state government agency.
the Commerce Commission, that's the ICC, I was confused.
Correct, yes.
It was ICC, it said he did not go and did not send me the records and that sort of thing, but did express there had been issues.
Okay. So we don't know if there were 26 citations in less than a year or not. As reported in the press, that's all I'm saying. That's why I'm asking. 26.
Do you happen to know, Mr. May, approximately how many citations you got from the Illinois Commerce Commission?
There were a few, I don't recall the exact number, but what they're for is, let me explain the citation. It's called a pre-tow authorization form, which I recommend here strongly in Nashville. You're supposed to let people know what you're charging them before you tow their vehicle, okay? So it's a written disclosure between you and them and the other party, so that way they know exact charges before the vehicle moves from point A to point B as a breakdown. Most companies don't do that, and their prices are all over the board. They don't have any consistency. But in Illinois, because that was a major issue with 5,000 companies to deal with within the surrounding counties, surrounding areas, surrounding towns, it was something that was a necessity because people were going and taking vehicles back to their facility without telling people where they're going, how much it's going to be, wreck sites or whether just a breakdown site. With that being said, a citation would be based on our driver not implying to the customer the amount that it's going to be charged from pickup to drop off before doing that service. That was the only citations I would have received.
But you received those repeatedly?
No. That's what I'm saying. If there was something in the press, they say many things about Donald Trump and Joe Biden. What's true, what's not.
May I ask him a question just to
Yes.
clarify? Are you in current good standing in the state of Illinois?
100%.
Are you in current good standing in the city of Chicago?
100%.
Regardless of the number of citations, have you been issued by either the ICC or the city of Chicago's governing body? Are you still able to operate in those areas?
100%, and we do daily.
If I could just conclude on this statement. We provided all of this information, Mr. Fields. I think he would even say, and I'm not asking Mr. Fields to be on the record or anything along those lines, we're giving information to this body, giving information. And if the hang-up is a June 20, 2022, after we've been involved, in which one tow event originated in a border community and terminated in an exterior community, we believe that shouldn't be a bar for an entity that otherwise has provided services for which no one in a ring community has complained about. There's not been an accident. There's not a consumer complaint against how they've operated here in Tennessee. They've received phone calls to do work in Davidson County, and they've turned it away. And they will continue to do that until they have authority to operate within this metropolitan area. If you look at the application, and I think the benefit of hindsight, if this phone call was made to our firm in April of 2022, we're not here today, quite frankly. But we don't have the benefit of that hindsight. There were mistakes made, there were stumbles. He has corrected that. I think through the documentation that's been provided, has demonstrated a concerted effort to curtail, as you stated in the last one, responsibility for his dispatchers to make sure that they're not dispatching. This is not a gentleman that's taking any phone calls himself on a day-in, day-out basis. He has a team that does that, operating through a centralized location, and he has implemented the processes to ensure that he is in compliance with what you requested him to do. We think he's an otherwise qualified applicant, as any other record company would be, and we respectfully ask that he has demonstrated that he not only has a willingness, but he's engaged, he is invested in this. He could have just walked away, but he's invested in this to be compliant, and he'll remain compliant. Thank you for your time and consideration through this process.
Thank you.
Billy, legal, without actually going back reading the record, I believe we did have some local record companies here initially with some complaints as to how service was given and how misuse of their names and their facilities were joined. Is that, am I mistaken?
There was an individual or two, as I remember. Again, we probably could call it up if you needed to see it, but there were issues raised.
I'm not sure those people were under oath. They may have been speaking out of turn.
They weren't under oath. I actually went back to watch the May hearing. Individual, in fact, the chair actually asked the individual to sit down multiple times, if the chair recalls. And the individual did not follow the chair's advice, and the chair allowed the individual to state and provide testimony. And the individual then abruptly left, and the chair in this commission denied, but made perfectly clear that they were not considering, because it wasn't under oath, any statements made by the individual here on that particular date. This has been on the hearing site since July. We were here, in June. There was no individuals that came in June. July was canceled, and now here we are in August. So there's been 3 bites at this apple for people to know about this hearing today. And you'll call for public comment, but I haven't seen anyone stand up just quite yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, would anyone like to make a motion regarding a priority towing company's application for wrecker and towing services permit?
Mr. Chair, if it's not out of order, would you like me to read you the standard?
Yes, thank you.
It's in 680-150A. If after a hearing, the commission finds upon examination that the applicant is capable, willing, and qualified to provide a wrecker service and can conform to the laws of the Metropolitan Government, the State of Tennessee, the United States, and the rules and regulations of the commission, and the commission may grant and issue to such applicant a license to operate a wrecker service. Otherwise, the application shall be denied.
Just for clarification, can you read that again so I can hit a bullet point here?
Sure. Let me take my mask off. Maybe that'll help. If after the hearing, the commission finds upon examination that the applicant is capable, willing, and qualified to provide a wrecker service and can conform to the laws of the Metropolitan Government, the State of Tennessee, the United States, and the rules and regulations of the commission, then the commission may grant and issue to such applicant a license to operate a wrecker service. Otherwise, the application shall be denied.
Thank you. And I think my problem with the whole thing is conform. Just through the
evidence presented before us as to the commission's desire for them not to do business in Davidson County, taking into consideration in the prior meetings, be it out of order or not, some of the businesses that are already in business in the same service, and just noting some of the citations, some of the procedure, be it they were able and willing, that's obvious. We know that you have the equipment, we know that you have the ability, and I would just question, the part of the statute that says to conform. That it just strikes me that there are too many, oh, okay, oh, okay, oh, I'm sorry, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. And we don't have those issues with the current record services that we have given permits in this city for. So to me, personally, not speaking for the rest of the commissioners, conforming seems to be a problem.
If I can ask a question, what are our tools or options for a permitted service that doesn't conform? I mean, is it simply giving citations?
Yes, our
That's
options are
really-
citations or bringing them to the commission.
Or bringing them back to the commission?
With records.
Discipline, yeah, suspension, revocation.
Okay.
Relative to conformance, we're aware of, I'll make sure I've got this right, the Goodlettsville towing issue, one. But then prior to that, this was the group where the commission said don't operate in Davidson County and operations continue. So there was a request to not operate in the county. There was a blatant operating in the county. There was a second request to not operate in the county, and then there was maybe an accident. But willingness to conform wasn't shown.
I'm sorry, one clarification. You were asking me about discipline. Ms. Westlake, I think that probation is also an option. Hearing before suspension, revocation, or probation, and after refusal to renew license or permit. So you can take action. If somebody has a permit and then commits violations, you can take action to suspend, revoke, or place on probation any license.
Yes.
Looking at the qualification standard, conformity is the issue. I understand that. Everyone at this commission understands that. If I would make a suggestion, if conformity is the concern, the issue we've had is, to your point, the oops, to making sure that our dispatchers don't make a mistake given the nomenclature of Goodlettsville, Madison, these what I call border communities. If I can make a recommendation, put us on 6 months probation. Give us operating authority. Let us allow us to demonstrate that outside of this black and white line of demarcation following the border of Metro, that otherwise we provide qualified services, that we will not have complaints about the services, because that's the stumbling block that we're having here. And what is being imputed is that if they have problems conforming on dispatching interior of Davidson County, then they might have problems conforming to the other rules. Well, let's address that head on. I believe that from my review of the ordinance, you have great latitude when it comes to issuing an actual permit and then monitoring that permit's operation. Place this company on 6-month, 3-month probationary period and set it on a hearing docket to show and demonstrate compliance, almost as a, to use the legal term, a good cause showing of why they should continue to operate. Because I believe our stumble is this line of demarcation, and then the assumption that if we have a stumble there, there'll be stumble other places. Let's remove the assumption and let's allow this company to demonstrate. That would be my recommendation, humbly, to this commission. Thank you.
I think it's difficult when you paraphrase what we think. I'm really upset that Mr. Fields asked him not to operate in the county, and he knowingly violated the law.
I'm gonna
That's so I think your assumption and your summary of the way we are thinking, or at least I'm thinking, is off base and off-putting.
I'm not trying to make that assumption. Respectfully, I'm not. I'm sitting up here trying to talk through the problem that this entity has had. You're correct, and we dealt with this in the June hearing. I came before this commission, and I still come before this commission acknowledging the mistake. You've never heard me, and I think you can go back and watch the tape, trying to make up an excuse or a justification. We acknowledge the mistake. And we use that June 8th line as the line of demarcation because that's when we entered the scene. And we have tried to put down very clear parameters of how this company has to operate in the state of Tennessee until it has approval. And I don't mean to paraphrase your word, but use the word oops, and that's the June 20th Goodlettsville issue. I can understand the frustration. Trust me, I can understand the frustration that this commission may have or actually has with this operation. But it has, as you can see, melded and moved in the right direction. And what I'm trying to provide is an opportunity for a company that's made a capital investment into this community, who has signed lease, is bringing trucks into the area to operate, so they can have an opportunity to have a chance to operate within this division, this district of the community, because they receive calls, and they're not doing the services now. They're not. And give them opportunity to demonstrate that they can clear that hurdle, to actually have a little bit of retribution, to show that they are a good corporate citizen. And that's why I'm making the recommendation. I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fields, do we know the number of tows that they've done in the surrounding counties?
Those are 4 or 5 pages, 4 to 5 pages each. Then we have these that were presented today, and there's 136 pages that were emailed to me. And, you know, frankly, I mean, we've gone through all of them. We have not obviously gone through these. We did a real quick review of the ones that were emailed to us this week. We've not, we were unable to get it completed because of some of the other things, but we've certainly been looking.
Have we had any letters, complaints, or filings from any of the other tow companies since the initial introduction of this company to the board?
We've had anecdotal comments. I've not gotten anything in writing. Now, some of the emergency companies are still here. They're on the streets obviously more than we are, because 500 square miles to cover in Davidson County, we couldn't possibly cover it all.
Is it possible to issue a probationary permit, time limited?
I don't think it's clearly described in the ordinance to do that.
It is not clearly described in the ordinance to do that. The probation is in the context of discipline subsequent to a license being granted.
Ms. Castells, if I may ask a question.
Yes.
There's not, but my read of the ordinance, there's nothing that stops this commission from granting an ordinance. And because there's been evidence of a mistake or violation, of immediately finding that probation would be necessary for this entity. There's nothing that precludes the commission from doing that in both the ordinance and the rules. Is that fair?
I mean, I guess if y'all stipulated that a violation had, the problem is, like, it wouldn't be after he got his license, because he's just now applying for his license, so.
There's a temporal issue, I understand, but I mean, from our standpoint, we've given you the information to acknowledge the mistake, and knowledge that there was a tow that originated in Nashville, at least on June 20th, originated in Nashville and terminated in Robertson County, when the individual didn't have a license. That would be the stipulated fact of a mistake or a violation. It's a temporal issue, it's almost a chicken and egg, but the way I read it, there's nothing that expressly precludes it, there's nothing expressly
So 150
granted.
does say in subsection B, such license shall state the name and address of the licensee, the number of records authorized upon such license, the date of issuance, and such other information as the commission determines to be necessary and proper.
Could you could I ask them, could they review the list, and I think you probably got it, Mr. King, regarding after the May meeting, you said there were some, you had said in a letter to the commission that we will note from our review that there were additional circumstances from May 26th to June 7th that Priority Record provided record service that either originated or terminated within Davidson County.
I said that at the very beginning of the presentation. That
Do you actually have a list of those now? Now, when was that permit denied initially?
it was denied the day of the 26th.
Okay.
So when we look at May 31st, there's obviously the citation that we had and still have that's on the docket whenever it rolls up. I believe that on May 31st, there was a Rutherford to Nashville tow. There was a Goodlettsville to Nashville tow, and that Goodlettsville one fell inside the Davidson line. There was a Davidson to Rutherford tow. There was a Davidson to Mount Juliet tow. There was a Nashville Davidson to Brentwood, Williamson County tow. There was a Wilco to Davidson tow. There was a Cheatham to Davidson. There was a Sumner to Davidson. And this is all before June 8th, just so I'm clear. There's a Rutherford to Davidson. There's a Humphreys to Davidson. There's one Davidson to one Davidson. There's a Whites Creek to Rutherford. There's a Nashville to Nashville. And there's a Davidson to Rutherford. And then there's a Montgomery Co. to Madison, which we had an asterisk on that one because we were having a hard time getting the longitude and latitude to figure out where in Madison. But that's through June 8th, and that's our line of demarcation from the retention of our law firm on that date. And then the only issue that we've identified here today is the Goodlettsville tow towards Springfield, Robertson County on June 20th, 2022. So if you take the line of demarcation from June 20, 2022 of that mistake, there's been no tows in Nashville. They have either originated or terminated or inside the city or outside the city. So we've done no business, record service business in Davidson County since that time period. And we provide our August records here today, which we haven't had. Our client handed them to us as he walked in the door, so we haven't had a chance to review them besides cursory looking at them, and we didn't see any that would cause concern as well.
And I'm just gonna state for the record, my problem is still conformity. I realize that you can only speak from the time that your firm was retained, but there were some issues prior to your firm being retained, in that I believe there was a phone call or visit to Mr. Fields' office in which Mr. Fields expressly pointed out that you do need a permit to operate within Davidson County, and that you should not do so until that permit is granted. That was prior to your, but it was presented to this council, and we just can't slice that off of.
And I'm not asking you to slice that off, sir, at all. And this comes back to my statement that if we had a time machine, things would be different. And as I said, and I sound like a broken record, and so I'm going to sit down, we made the mistake. The company made the mistake, and I think you've seen a change in its trajectory since our retention and a frankly thumb-down approach of their operations. And that's, talking to Ms. Constells about the term, I'm not asking for full-fledged authority here. I'm asking for an opportunity to demonstrate compliance. This happens a lot in industries where you've made mistakes. You need to earn the right to operate without supervision. And we're asking for that opportunity here today through this supervision. Put it on the docket. Make Mr. Fields, excuse me, not Mr. Fields, sorry, I'm looking at Mr. Fields as my client.
Oh, make me too.
Make Priority Record Services demonstrate that they're a good corporate citizen in this community.
I think we've heard quite a bit of evidence and argument by Priority Towing, and had some good questions by Mr. Fields. We've got some questions addressed by our commissioners. It looks like by Priority's own count, they had at least 17 tows after they were denied a permit at our May meeting, prior to retaining his attorney. And then it looks like there's been one tow that we're aware of that occurred, that originated within Davidson County on June 20th.
If we were to deny it today, can they reapply in a month or 6 months, or what's the period to reapply?
I can actually answer that, Teresa.
Okay, go ahead.
Currently, there's not a time period for record companies. A record driver that's denied cannot reapply for 90 days.
So a company can reapply at any time?
There's not a current rule that would preclude them from reapplying.
It's actually one of the, I think, rules that legal is drafting right now for us to consider implementing in the future.
There'd be a tremendous opportunity for the driver or for the company, if they were denied approval today, to show that they're a good corporate citizen by not receiving complaints in all the other counties where they currently operate and the other states. Instead of us being a guinea pig and granting approval and saying, you know, we're gonna let you do this, it's just another way to show that they can be successful by not getting complaints when they come back if they reapply. I'd like to move that we deny the application.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. King. Thank you, Mr. May. We've also been asked to review a non-consent towing application for All Out Towing. Mr. Fields?
Yes. All Out Towing is a record company operating in Nashville, has been for several years. They are now applying to be a non-consent record company.
Good afternoon. I'm
Mr. Formosa, if you would say. He's a very eager individual.
Mr. Fields, can we move for a couple-minute break? I believe our chair needs.
Oh,
Yeah, I do need to leave. I'll just state, I apologize, I'm having to leave the meeting early. Ms. Westlake is going to take over. I don't know if a special vote needs to be.
You'd probably
had.
need to select, but I'd actually, because I went ahead and called some individuals and asked about who would like to chair, and she didn't say she'd like to, but
we would like you to.
I don't remember that conversation.
I was going to complete. However, she did not protest to as great a degree as the rest of you did. That's the same?
That's
So,
the same.
Thank you.
In general, when you don't have either the chair or the vice chair present, what you do is just do a quick election to elect someone to act in that role.
I'd like to move that we elect Ms. Westlake as the interim chair for today. Or
Second
today.
that motion?
Second. All in favor? Aye. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So
you
who's
go.
your chair?
Do you need a break?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Fields?
All Out Towing is a record company, has been in Nashville for several years. We have not, to my knowledge, had any consumer complaints or violations brought to the commission. The rules that you've passed says in order to be a non-consent record company, you have to have been in business at least a year and have no, paraphrasing, no general issues to report. He doesn't have any general issues. He does meet the criteria. He is present and can can certainly speak for himself. As the Formosa family have been very active in Nashville for a lot of years.
Just for clarification, can you tell us the difference between non-consent towing and regular towing?
Yes, you have, we regulate 3 levels of towing. We have a general record company, which means someone will call that company and they will make whatever deal they want to make and that vehicle will be towed. Non-consent means they would go onto private property and be towed at the request of the property owner without the owner of the vehicle's consent. For instance, if you own a business or at your house, if you have property and a vehicle is sitting on that property, the owner of the property can call and have that vehicle removed. We regulate that to make certain that it's a consumer protection issue to make sure that car has to be reported. They treat that car exactly like they do an accident by the emergency companies, where that car is reported to the police and so forth. Those rates are also regulated by this commission, and earlier today you approved it. Their rates are identical to the rates of emergency record companies. And then, of course, the emergency record companies are the ones that are on 24-hour standby for the police or law enforcement to remove from the streets. So non-consent is a higher level of, we give them a higher level of trust. We expect higher level of service because they're removing vehicles without the owner's consent.
And just for clarification, they do have to have the property owner's consent.
Correct.
They just can't go on private property because they have that consent.
Right. And each tow has to be signed for that tow. You can't do a manager can't say here, you know, tow anything that shows up on the lot as we do for booting. If a vehicle is removed from property, someone has to physically sign for that ticket at the time of the tow. If not, then it's a violation of the ordinance.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Fields. So we can hear briefly from a representative of All Out Towing.
Good afternoon. Nicholas Formosa is born and raised in this great county and plan to stay here as long as I can. I've got my office manager here, Brandy Barnes, with me. She does all of our day-to-day stuff. But yeah, we just would like to be able to expand our business for our current customers and offer just the services of removal of non-consensual parked vehicles at their location. So I won't take up too much of your time, but that's what we're here for. And like Mr. Field said, we've been in business 6.5 years, never had any complaints. We do everything by the book, and we figured out how hard it is to get use permits and stuff like that through Davidson County, but we've got all that completed, and we are here to try to get that done today.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners?
And for the commission's clarification, the use permits he's talking about, you can't just, it is becoming very, very challenging for companies to be able to impound vehicles because they can only be impounded on certain kinds of properties that have specific land uses. Most of it's in industrial. And as you know, the industrial property is reducing and shrinking by, so it's, it certainly is a challenge, and based on my reviews and conversations, very expensive.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In this, I guess, quick question, just relative to how the towing operates. So let's just say we have an industrial property, and there's a vehicle that's parked. There's adequate signage for the tow. Somebody signs for the tow. How are the charges regulated?
You actually regulate them. If that car were to be towed, the rate you just passed is 100. I think it's 185.
185 is the new rate.
So they would actually have to charge anything above that, and the storage also, the storage rates would apply as well.
And it goes to the person picking up the car who's parked illegally.
The rates are in there.
Yeah, that was the rate we just
Right.
passed.
Yeah.
But you can't, this is not to tow for somebody who's parked in a surface parking lot downtown without paying or without the owner's consent.
No, it could be. If it's on private property, if the owner or the manager of the property, it used to be the owner under state law. Several years ago, the state law was changed to allow the owner to designate someone to manage that property. If the manager or the designee of that property regulates it, for instance, the lot that's down on 2nd Avenue from the building that burned a few years back, that's currently parked, if you wanted to tow off that, you certainly could. You'd have to have signage, and you'd have to charge the rates, and you can and you can be towed out of a parking garage as well. It's more challenging in a parking garage, but it certainly
Right.
it has been done.
Great. Any other questions? The application is in order, I take it?
I move we accept the application.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Grant that application. Thank you. Our next item of business in taxi cabs.
The Tin Cab has asked that they add some owners to their membership roster. They are individually owned. There's several that are together. Do we have representatives of Tin Cab? Is anyone here from Tin Cab to speak? Anyway, it is in order.
Okay,
They just have to report it to the commission.
correct.
And this was just a matter of their corporate legal documents as
Correct.
adding them to
Correct.
the board when they, okay.
And they are required to report that to us.
Yep.
So if I could have a motion to modify their membership?
I make a motion to modify Tin Care's membership as it states in the documents.
Thank you.
Second.
Appreciate that. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Membership modified. Thank you. And a request to change the address for volunteer taxi?
Just as you had to make the modification for ownership of Tin Cab, Volunteer Taxi has to move their address. In order to do that, because it's changing their application, then they have to be approved by the commission. Clearly, it's in order.
Thank you.
Move to approve the change of address of volunteer taxi to 2201 Murfreesboro Pike, Suite 105.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Carrie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll change that address. Thank you. Our next item of business is other passenger vehicles for hire. We have one driver permit application to review.
Yes. Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson applied to work for Recona Transport. In making his application, he listed loitering, property damage, crash, and unsafe operation. When we did the background check, there were two incidents that appeared that he did not reveal. One was an arrest on December the 12th of 2019 on a charge of sexual assault, and it also indicated an arrest on May the 6th, 2021 on a charge of abusive sexual contact. We were unable to determine the outcome of any of those. I believe he was in the military, and it was done through the military, and we did not have access to those records. Is that a fair assessment? Were you in the military at the time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you tell us the outcome of those two situations?
Both were investigations that were closed prior to me getting out.
You know, I'd ask that if you could provide information. Have you been able to get any information, documentation through the military that would substantiate what you've said?
As far as it being closed?
Yes.
Well, you can't out process until it's closed. That's one thing, but I don't actually have documentation of it being closed because it was just investigations. It never even reached court.
Oh, and I'm not doubting you. I just wanted to, from a record standpoint,
Yes, sir.
if it shows, it's just as far
understand.
if you look at the record, it would show as open.
Okay.
And you know, I have no additional information, and
Well-
clearly there are a lot of cases that are open and closed, and nolo contendere and nolo proseque and all those other nolos that the lawyers do. So.
Well, I mean,
I'm not doubting it. I just didn't have evidence of it.
So quick
And we
question.
asked for it, and we just don't have it.
Are you on probation? Have you been on probation?
No, I've even just done another recent background check for Uber and Lyft, and both came back just fine. I'm an active driver.
And the reason why we're asking is because there is certain terms and qualifications that would automatically disqualify you.
Understood.
Had you been convicted and placed on probation.
Understood.
So the Inquisition is not just to put you on the spot. It's to see if we can even proceed forward.
Yes, sir.
Did this, assault, was this a fiance, girlfriend? What would the, how did this come about for you to be charged?
Well, I wasn't charged, but
Someone brought charges against you.
Well, the short story would be a breakup followed by a fake report that was closed.
Okay. I'm just.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully it was.
We actually got married after that, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're now married, or you were married to the person that filed these charges?
Right.
I just would have been more concerned if it was somebody at a bar or something.
Oh, no, I don't
Just,
even.
That's the reason why I'm asking that.
Assuming the charges were dropped, there would be no prohibition from him.
Yep.
He would not be
That's gonna
excluded
my
automatically.
question for our attorney. Thank you. So there is no prohibition for us to offer this permit on its application.
Well, I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will grant the permit.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is our consent agenda. There are a couple of requests to modify company ownership for OPVHs. Mr. Fields?
Passenger vehicles for hire.
Right.
Thank you.
At the request of a commissioner, they asked if I would prepare what the staff would consider the consent agenda. We, and many of the other commissions do that, as well as the Metropolitan Council. The typical process would be is you would be able to review them. If you had any that you wanted to remove for a special hearing, you would be able to do that. Otherwise, you would be able to, in total, approve at one time. I'd be happy to read them into the minutes if you'd like. On the
Okay.
consent. For the consent,
If you don't mind, can we do the consent in two parts?
Sure
Do
can.
that, do the company ownership modifications first, and then we'll do the new apps. Thank you.
Dialco, Black Cars to add Dialco Idris Jazal as partner, and Executive Limo LLC to add Haron Azimi as a partner.
So those requests are in order
They are in order.
from the staff? Great. Can I have a motion to
So
approve?
moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then the reviewing the new company applications, if you will read those into the record, and we'll ask if anybody has any concerns of any of them.
Other passenger vehicles for hire company applications include 24/7 Limo, Adam Limo LLC, AJJ Transportation LLC, Ahmad Limo, Aiden's Transportation LLC, BA Driving Service, Benny Limo, CLK LLC, Darveen Luxury Rides, Darwashi Limo, Elisa Pettit Trans, Executive Travel of Nashville LLC, HB Limo Service, H&S, Ibrahim Limo, Kahai Transportation LLC, Lewis Campy Transport LLC, Metro Ride, Nafis Shuttle, PKK Transportation LLC, Sammy Garage Limo LLC, Sana Limo, TES Satellite Communications, TN Empire Transportation, and Simu Limo Service. All of them are in order.
Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Fields.
Yeah, so
Tongue
these are the new
twisters in there.
company applications that are in order. Commission members have had a chance to take a look at those if they want to. Does anyone have any concerns about any of those applications?
Just philosophically, I'm curious, how many more do we need? We get a lot of these applications. I don't know how many stay in business or go out of business.
This is 2 months' worth, but we have had a proliferation of limousine and black car services since Uber and Lyft came into business. The taxi cabs started changing. part of the issue is, for good or bad, for Uber, to drive an Uber Black company, to qualify as Uber Black, you actually have, if the local jurisdiction has licensing, they're required to come and get licensing from the local government. So I can't tell you exactly how many are going to be Uber Black services, but several of these are, I'm confident, are going to be Uber Black service. That, again, Uber requires them to come to local, so we do all their work.
I guess I'm in general a fan of the rideshare companies and app-based ride-hailing. Also have read different kind of traffic studies and white papers that talk about traffic from cars that just sit there or that move around and don't necessarily have rides. So I wonder, is there ever a saturation point, or is it, you know, we'll get to 30,000 of these and more people will not take their own car, right? So if they were like an autonomous vehicle, if I had a car that could come pick me up and it was really convenient, the price was right, I wouldn't drive my car and I'd get in one of these. But I don't know, I didn't know if, you know, your department or if anybody's really thought about at what point do we reach the right saturation point.
If I may, Madam
Please.
Chair. So it's really hard to tell what is the right and how much the market is actually saturated. We are not privy to the information of how many Uber and Lyft riders are out there to determine that. It is a conversation we have with the company, and it's something also we're looking at as part of Connect Downtown, in looking at creating those drop-off and pick-up points and then actually geo-fencing certain areas outside that they wouldn't be allowed into. So we're working with them for that conversation. But I will tell you, right now there is a shortage of Uber and Lyft drivers. That's why you see a spike in the rates that's significantly high. That's being felt across the country, not just here. But we certainly would like to, but yes, we would reach a point, and at that, I think where we have the opportunity is regulating the curb. And that's where I think Connect Downtown is going to help us with establishing what those policies are going to be for consideration for our Traffic and Parking Commission to consider. That may even run into becoming regulation that would go before council. But that would also be something we would share. And that, I think, is where we would have some of the opportunities to control it so that they're not impacting traffic. It is very true driving around. Part of Connect Downtown is also looking at how we can partner with the public-private garages. So we provide wayfinding or direction through an app process that would get people to a garage and on their feet. So we do not have that circulation. Most studies have shown throughout downtown cores, at least 70% of the folks that are driving are just driving around to either be seen or to find parking. So if there's opportunities to get people out of the cars, that is something we're looking at doing as well.
May I add some additional context?
Please.
So a few years ago, we were negotiating with Uber and Lyft to develop some regulations of them as a function of this commission, but subsequently they approached the state legislature, who enacted a new state provision that deprives municipal governments of any ability to regulate what they call transportation network companies, except to the extent that the drivers are required by the companies to get the licensing for the Black service. And curiously, Chapter 674 that regulates the other passenger vehicles for hire is the only chapter, I think, that you have before you where you do not have to make an initial finding that the public necessity and convenience requires additional before granting additional permits.
When this particular ordinance was created, I believe in 2010, there was a great deal of interest. We actually began looking at it in 2003. It came to 2010. And by 2012, we were in federal court over our rights to do that, and we were successful in being able to regulate OPVH under some of the federal jury
legislation to court. That's been an issue across the country. They did that with every state, I think. And some of it has been challenged.
They told us that it was easier to negotiate with 50 states than thousands of municipalities.
Yes, and the thing about it is, I will tell you also, the one state that's been very successful with actually are where they went to the state and the state actually did do it and then they overrode it was California. And so the municipalities have been successful in a court case of where they can actually come in and regulate Uber and Lyft. So there are some case studies out there if we wanted to go that route where they have been able to use it and show that it acts more as a taxi, which is regulated by many of the local municipalities versus it being if they qualified as a technology networking company, which is what they use. But taxis today have the same concept, so it kind of depletes or it eliminates the conversation. So if we could, maybe that's an avenue we follow.
I'm surprised that was
Can I make a motion to sue?
Can
we look into that further? I mean, obviously.
Oh, we certainly can. Ms. Alarcon is exactly right. It was very contentious around the country. We spent 13 or 14 months with Uber and Lyft in very hard-nosed negotiation. We actually were the first or second. The airport was the first that actually established local authority over Uber and Lyft. Unfortunately, they had some issues with other cities in Tennessee, and they approached the state legislature, and Ms. Castones was right. She remembers their words. 50 is easier than 1,000.
I'm just curious, was the airport successful with being able to keep theirs in? Because I have found most airport authorities have been successful in managing fee and control and all of that. And maybe that's what we do is we partner. Well, you can't do that because I know most of the airport language and the contracts actually state they cannot share the information.
But yeah, the airport is under separate authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, the issue, as the commissioner said, is not straightforward. There's some evidence that they create worse traffic problems, and they also draw people in cities that have mass transit, draw people out of mass transit.
Yeah.
It's not a big problem here, obviously. So those issues are not clear-cut, to say the least.
We are, I will assure the commission, we are laser focused on our authority to keep to work with traffic and parking on loading and unloading zones and illegal parking in the downtown area. And many of the citations that are being issued are too. We've had some taxi cabs and we've had some limos, and we will continue. And we've had private citizens as well. So
we are ticketing.
Yes, we are.
Uber. Okay.
Yes, if they're parked, if they're in violation of the code, we are ticketing them.
Okay.
They are required to follow the same rules of the road as everybody else.
Okay. Go get them.
Great, thank you. And it sounds like when this study is finally done, there'll be lots of conversations we can have about a lot of things in terms of.
I think you will be very happy.
Of traffic downtown. So, but meanwhile, we don't have an obligation to look at public necessity and convenience. We do have a set of company applications in front of us that are in order.
We've approved the new application, the new OPVH company applications that are listed.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That will grant those applications. Is there any other business to come before this
In other
group?
business, your last meeting, there was a letter that was given to you by Honky Tonk Express through their attorney, Mr. Sims. You spoke about it for a few moments, but you asked that it be deferred to this meeting for discussion. Ms. Castones?
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of go through it. So they requested, in the interim, as you're aware, a lawsuit has been filed by them, by Honky Tonk Party Express against Metro. But they did request that this still be considered today, given the deferral that you all made on the 18th. They did explain that because of the filing of the lawsuit, they felt it would be inappropriate for them to appear before you, but they still requested that their
That's just their letter saying that it would be approved.
yes, it would. We don't think it's appropriate to speak in person tomorrow, but we would ask that the commission consider Honky Tonk's letter and resolve these issues. So that's what you're requested to do. So I went through the letter and kind of tried to figure out what their asks were.
Thank you.
And so the first one, I think, is item A10 on page 2. It says they're respectfully requesting that the TLC award it 4 additional ETV permits. And then in 11, as an alternative, it says if you're not willing to do that, they also request that you not enforce the new, more limited permit allocation until December 31, 2022. Do you want to talk about these like individually, or?
Why don't we do that real quickly, if that's okay? Are there any commission members who have any comments, discussion, thoughts about these two requests?
I wish they were here today to tell us more about number 11 in particular, why they feel this way. Disappointed they skipped the meeting.
I think that the letter does sort of explain that they have some existing bookings, and through, at least through November, that they wanted to make sure that they were able to accommodate those.
Have we had a similar request from any of the other companies?
We've got one more request for another review that came in yesterday
Of,
numbers, and there, a lot of them have concerns about rules there, and timing and that sort of thing.
And I think when we were considering, they all had statements of money lost because of bookings. That was not necessarily a letter, but a statement made. We have so many, and again, to this commission, and as an accolade, we considered all that, I believe, at that meeting as well, that there were statements made by almost every company here as to a financial loss due to any changes we might make.
Okay. If there are no additional comments or interest in those, can we move to the next one?
Yes, the next one is on page 3. It's item B21.
I do want to make one comment. I mean, I've witnessed, like, permit atonement number 6. I've witnessed them loading buses and unloading buses and taking pictures of this on public property.
With this particular vendor?
With this particular vendor. At DeMumbrian and 3rd a few weeks ago, I sent you a picture and asked, why are they loading and unloading in front of City Tap House? I mean, that's an outright fabrication.
Which
I don't know if they've been cited for it.
But it does make you think
right
about
there.
this request.
It makes me think about the request.
Shall I go on with
Thank you. Please,
B21?
please,
Yeah.
Ms. Casone.
It says they respectfully request that the TLC amend the enclosure requirement to imply from November through February each year, but not from March through October. And in support of that, they go through a lot of the issues that they've had with the heat in the enclosure and the difficulty of installing air conditioning that you all have previously heard from other companies as well.
Yeah.
And again, just a matter of statement, there were many companies that were present at the time that said, we're able to do it. Many of them stated, we've done it from the beginning. So, again, we are not, I feel, asking for something that cannot be done, that other companies are not already complying to. And I just say that as a form of statement.
So B21 on page 3 also kind of has an alternative suggestion, which I think is 31 on page 5, where it says, if the enclosure requirement is not eliminated for the warm months, they respectfully request that the TLC hold implementation of the enclosure requirement in abeyance pending further proceedings and the receipt of evidence from entertainment transportation companies in January or February 2023 as to their ability to enclose from March through October. So they're asking you, rather than just getting rid of the enclosure requirement for those warmer months altogether, that you just hold it in abeyance until February 2023.
If I'm not mistaken, we did give an extension at the last meeting.
We did.
And what was the end date on the extension?
October 3rd.
October 3rd, and they're requesting till
February.
January or February 2023.
Your initial was 60 days, your second one was 45 days. That actually started before the 60 was over. So they will have ended up having, 80 days addition beyond, you've given them about 80 days, I would say so far. Maybe 90.
Yeah, I thought it was closer to 100, but yeah.
It could be.
Well, and actually, I mean, if we've given them till October, that's really close to November.
Yeah.
I mean, when they said they would be prepared to do that.
A little bit of rope, everybody wants to be a cowboy.
Shall I go on?
Okay, if there's no interest in any further discussion about that, let's go on.
Okay, so on page 6, number 42, I guess it's under C, it says they're asking, this is about the hours of operation or the limitations on the hours of operation. And they said what they would like an adjustment of the hours that you all previously adopted. And what they were requesting is that the 4 to 6 restriction be removed on Fridays, and that the curfew be moved from 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. And they further, in addition, I guess, request that hours of operation not go into effect until December 31, 2022. Again, to avoid having to cancel booked tours.
Currently, these are already in effect.
They're in effect.
The hours are in effect.
They are, because
They went into effect when we passed the minutes.
Right.
Last week.
Yeah.
And they're effectively asking to be able to operate during the busiest times.
I think they're only asking to operate during 4 to 6 on Fridays.
On Friday.
And then they're asking for an additional hour on the curfew on Friday and Saturday nights from 11 p.m. to 12 a.m.
So they would alter the rule to say no ETV would be able to operate Sunday through Thursday between Saturday, because we don't, it'd be Monday through Thursday, because we don't do Saturday and Sunday. They would be still 4 to 6 Monday through Thursday, then no restrictions on Friday, and then go to midnight each night of the week rather than 11.
Each night of the weekend.
Weekend, which typically I experience Friday being the busiest traffic day between 4 to 6 of the week. Just to know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've personally received many complaints from residents in the downtown core. I've talked to hotel owners. We're a hotel owner, and heard complaints from guests. I mean, Miss Williams is a downtown resident. I'm sure she's heard from many of her neighbors and experienced firsthand the noise that are associated with this, that late at night. And I think if there was any, at least for me, consideration of later hours, it would be in a really defined route that would be, we've talked a little bit about being away from churches and schools and houses and condo buildings. If they want to cruise East Nashville, not East Nashville, I'll take that back.
Here comes the lettuce.
They want to cruise around the Titan Stadium at 11 o'clock at night, or around the PSC Metals plant at 11 o'clock at night. We're in a heavy industrial zone. I don't think that Nashvillians are going to care all that much. But when you've got 20,000 people living downtown and 30 or 40,000 sleeping downtown in hotel rooms, that's where you tend to get complaints. Let alone the traffic congestion that's caused by the slow-moving vehicles when we have 40 to 60 police and fire calls on a Friday and Saturday night, and police and fire and life safety can't get there. And it tends to escalate later into the evening.
It does.
So it sounds like we are comfortable with our current rules in that regard.
Okay, their next issue is related to insurance, and their first ask with regard to that is in D47 on page 6. It says they respectfully request that the increase in insurance limits not be implemented
until the TLC determines the ability of Honky Tonk Party Express and other entertainment transportation companies to feasibly enclose from March through October. And then in addition, in 49, they respectfully request that the TLC eliminate the liquor liability insurance requirement due to the lack of a suitable product in the marketplace.
I would ask Mr. Fields, has there been identified a suitable insurance company that would provide coverage in these two areas?
Yes, sir, the overall carrier is named Prime. We have at least one company, and I really think another one has come in, that has been able to secure the insurance. Now, I've been advised that's very expensive and shown the bills, and it is certainly not cheap, but it is available.
Any discussion or comment? If not.
I'm curious, I mean, I'd love to hear from them why they can't get insurance if it's actually available.
And paragraph 48, they say, as to liquor liability, HTPE has extensively investigated and has been unable to identify a reputable insurer that offers such a policy.
So maybe they're saying Prime's not reputable?
I think
cost.
Could, I mean, they're not here to answer the question,
Yeah.
so it's hard to want to change.
Okay, without an interest in change, we'll move forward.
Paragraph, or section E on page 7 is about GPS and decibel readers. It says they've installed the decibel readers, while installing GPS is not really a problem in concept, they've had trouble getting a commitment from their service provider as to when the service can be initiated. So they are asking for a deferral of that requirement until December 31, 2022 as well. And
Again,
that appears to be it.
Again, Mr. Fields, we asked this same thing of the scooters, did we not?
It's a different, yes, and we also have it for taxi cabs.
Right.
This particular issue, Mr. Schlafer and I had the privilege of inspecting, I think, 17 Honky Tonk Express buses yesterday afternoon. They were in generally good condition. They were unenclosed. They did have the decibel readers. And unless I'm mistaken, he described what the GPS, the GPS is, they found it. It's, I'm not going to speak for them and say it was ordered, but I wish they were here to describe the new GPS. But well, I won't speak for them, but it was my impression that GPS was available.
Right, and just speaking from a little experience in that this phone has a GPS in it, and there are ready apps that you can download into each phone of the driver or the operator of that, and it is a very minimal cost, and that just as a suggestion that it can be tracked GPS down to it, how many minutes the truck stops at each stop through that app, and that I would express that it's readily available.
Okay. And that really is the end of the requests that they were making in this.
And there's only one other item. Again, it was, this came from a communication from the chair. Emmett Martin, who I think is president, who operates Sprocket Rocket, had some concerns about enforcement of ET rules downtown. The chair said he would give him a couple of minutes at the end of the agenda to share those concerns with you.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for doing this review. I'm hearing no motion or interest in making any changes. We know that there's a lawsuit pending. I will just kind of let that go forward. And then our last item of business will be to hear from Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin?
Real quick, do we need to make a motion that we're not going to take any action or no action?
No action.
No action.
It keeps the status quo in place, so all of your rules would still be where they were.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Hi, how are you guys? My name is Emmett Martin. I'm owner of Sprocket Rocket. And I'm just here to ask you guys to give you a perspective of what's actually going on downtown versus what you're hearing from a lot of the companies. I'm in the pedal carriage business, of course, and we went through this like 4 years ago, and it was hard, but we went through it, we did it, and we followed the rules. And I'm asking you guys to really enforce the rules that you have set in place for the ET vehicles, because I think them not obeying the rules down there is hurting all of us. Some of the companies that came up here and asked for permits, you granted some permits for ET and some for sightseeing, and those companies are still using all those vehicles for ET. Ultimate Party Bus had 4 buses down there all weekend as party vehicles. And that's just, that kind of behavior to me hurts all of us. And it's why you guys were forced to, the city council was forced to come up with rules anyways, because people don't know how to self-police themselves. So I don't enjoy coming up here. I'm not trying to necessarily get any other companies in trouble, but I'm here to tell you that a lot of what you guys heard and reasons why you granted permits were, some of them were flat out lies. And I just feel like you need to know that. One of the biggest things that made me get to the point where I felt like I needed to come up here and say this was Hell on Wheels. They came up here and they gave you this big long speech about how they were going to go out of business and that they were following the rules and that their trucks were enclosed, and those are flat out lies. And I don't care if they hate me for coming up here and saying stuff. I feel like that's what I need to do. So on Saturday, I'm also a citizen also. I mean, my business, I own a business on 6th and Lafayette. I'm downtown all the time. I live in Edgehill. I used to live at the Encore. So I'm down here all the time. So not only am I a business operator, I'm also a citizen who has to move around. So Hell on Wheels had all 3 of their vehicles in a convoy, which I think you're the one who said no more convoys. They rolling around town. They pull up in front of Old Smoky, and they block the entire lane of traffic and force all the vehicles into the opposite lane. And the same guy that was up here telling you he's abiding by the rules is the one that's directed oncoming traffic into the opposite lane. And I sent the video to you guys. I don't know if any of you looked at that video. So I just feel like it's like, where is it going to end? And it makes me angry that we're following the rules and that these guys are down there and they come up here and they say something to you and you give them their permits and then they go right back out there and they're just doing the same bad behavior. So I'm standing here before you because I know how I operate my company and I know how I follow the rules, and all of us have employees. You can't always control every single one of your employees. Good example. This is a great example. Last night, my vehicle got pulled over, asked for the permit. The driver didn't have his permit with him. He left it in his car. That guy no longer has a job with me. That's how I operate. So I'm asking you guys to enforce the same kind of rules, and if people are saying to you, hey, we're going to operate 2 vehicles this way, hold them accountable to that is all I'm asking. I'll answer any questions that you guys want.
Does anyone have any questions?
No, I just want to say I appreciate your candor and that time is the ultimate equalizer.
Good.
So, yeah, it's been an interesting process, absolutely. But we really rely on the community, on citizens, on other business owners to help us do our job. So.
And, you know, I give Billy a hard time. I tell him he's going to miss me the most when he leaves because...
And I think I'll go on the record and I say, you're going to miss me more.
I am. I'm very passionate about everything, and I like to, you know, I'm a rule follower. And especially in this business where, again, I'm a citizen down here, so I'm not only a business owner, but I'm also a citizen. I'm affected by everything that's going on. And the entertainment vehicles, I used to have 2 of those trucks. When all this started to go down, I decided to make a choice. I want to be in a green vehicle with pedals, and I want to stick to this side because there's only for companies, and I know we're doing things the right way. I did not want to be mixed up in a group that come up here and consistently says one thing and then goes down and operates in another way. So
I have asked Mr. Fields if he'll include in our monthly agenda packets a list of all violations that have occurred every month, and to what entity or to what entertainment, whether they're entertainment vehicles or pedal carriages or pedicabs or whatever, so that we are informed about that. And with the two people who you have that are coming on to actually enforce things.
Two on board and another one coming on,
Yeah.
on September 5th.
If I could ask a related question, can I go on the hub and like take a picture of Hell on Wheels and send it in? Because it was hard to find.
It is hard to find. It is hard to find.
I found it by searching for party, but I couldn't find it on the menu anywhere. Could we work on making that easier?
Oh.
Can you take a note and then we'll reach out to Nashville and see if we can get that updated? Thank you for that.
And I mean, you guys, you dwindled, I think, down to what, 80 vehicles? I guarantee you, most of them are still out there.
And again, time is the
Counting
equalizer.
enforcement.
Yeah.
But I wanted you to hear this from somebody who's in the same arena, who's not afraid to stand up to say, if you guys can't operate the right way, you shouldn't be allowed to operate. And I'm opening myself up for you to come look at me too. That's how confident I am in how I operate my business.
We
Laughing
always
at me.
look at you, Mr. Mark.
Well,
And I, from what I hear, the office has been very busy with citations since we last met.
We are very aggressively going through the things that we
But
can,
there isn't a
especially
stay
loading
yet.
and unloading. And that particular area is on the radar.
No, okay.
That it, yeah.
That you cited, so.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you.
By the way,
That's what.
I pay over $80,000 a year in insurance, and that includes liquor liability. So everybody can get liquor liability.
Did your liquor liability come from Cincinnati Specialty?
I
Just-
think so.
if you
I
told
used to
them,
be on Prime,
I want them
but I
to
think
tickets
it's
for
Cincinnati.
parking and bike
But
They-
we're all,
That's what-
when they took 4 to 6 away from us,
'Cause there should be
we
lot of
lost a
those.
lot of money also. We had to go through the same thing that they're going through. I feel their pain, but we did it because that's what we had to do. And I hope that they have to do it.
thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for coming in and thank you
Thank
for your
you.
Thank you.
perspective.
Okay.
Appreciate it. I think we have reached the end of our agenda.
Have no other business to present.
Does anyone have any other business? Thank you. Got a
Move we
motion to
adjourn.
close? Yeah, we'll call that a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is concluded. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.